Record. Okie doke. Well, welcome everyone to the Hot Topics. It's our monthly forum of the League of Women Voters here in Nashville. Today we're going to be having a presentation about Root Nashville with Jason Sprouls. But before I introduce him and describe Root Nashville and such, I want to let you know that the April Hot Topic will be a presentation about the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. Specifically, KJ Garner, who is a commissioner on the BPAC, Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, will be our presenter. And that will be, again, the first Friday in April at noon. And of course, I should know the exact date, but y'all just put it on your calendar for the first Friday in noon. So today, we're going to have a discussion about Root Nashville with Jason Sprouls. Jason Sprouls is the Urban Forestry Program Manager for the Cumberland River Compact. He got a master's in forestry from Virginia Tech and is a certified arborist, and he has had many years of experience in urban forestry planting initiatives. Here, his primary job is to oversee the citywide tree planting initiative, Root Nashville. So Root Nashville has a goal to plant about 500,000 trees by 2050, and the compact is a lead operational partner that is responsible for helping the city meet this goal. One way we work with the city is to support the campaign by engaging leaders to serve as neighborhood planting captains. So one of the things that may happen is that Jason may try to enjoin you to become a neighborhood planting captain. I know that here I am living in Sylvan Park, and we have had a number of Root Nashville experiences and also a number of people who have been involved in planting. If you become a captain, they'll train you and help you bring trees into the neighborhoods. One of the things that's I think is very important for those of you who probably know a little bit about our area, there are a couple reasons that it's super important, and I'm sure Jason will tell you this, and I may be stumping on his whatever, but we have a lot of trees that are older. And so one of the things that we have are some issues about trees as they age, which are, can be a problem because trees do not live forever. Some of them are beautiful. We have some amazing old trees, but we also have trees that are nearing kind of their, useful, well, not useful, but their life end. However, the major problem we have are some invasive problems with invasive species that will be taking out some of our major reduction in trees, specifically our ash trees. So increasingly putting in trees to replace those are going to be important. So I'm sure Jason will tell us all about that. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Jason.
I don't know how to follow up that great introduction, but I'll do my very best. I appreciate the thoughtful and kind words and really comprehensive introduction. And I'm really honored to be included on this. This is a great group with a rich history that I'm really excited to present about our city's tree program with. So the structure I have prepared is I'll give a slideshow presentation with some of the information that Karen mentioned, and we can leave plenty of time for questions and answers as it relates to our urban forest system and Root Nashville, so that people feel like they get a full understanding of what our city's urban forestry scene may be able to offer them as a person. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we practiced this before people came, so we wouldn't have to worry about it. And then, all right. Great. Okay, so like Karen said, I work at the Cumberland River Compact. This is a nonprofit that's mission is that of water resource conservation through voluntary actions that enhance water quality in the Cumberland River and Cumberland River Basin, primarily through education, outreach, and restoration initiatives that people opt into to encourage positive behaviors that enhance our environment, and namely water quality here in Nashville and the greater region. So Root Nashville, you might be asking, well, that's a different organization. No. Root Nashville is a really interesting and progressive tree planting campaign that not only Nashville is lucky to enjoy, but nationwide is one that's lauded as very progressive. And I'll get a little bit more into that. But the program's history, in 2018, Bloomberg Consultants led some studies and determined that they should one of their key findings was to suggest to the then mayoral administration to launch a tree planting program called Root Nashville with the goal of planting 500,000 trees by 2050. So this is a Metro-funded program that is configured in such a way that there's two lead operational partners. Metro Water Services houses our urban forestry department, which is tasked with the planting and care of trees in public areas. So that could be rights of ways, which are the areas between sidewalks and roads. That could include public schools. That could include other Metro-owned properties. And they are the main purveyors of that resource. The Cumberland River Compact is uniquely situated with our Root Nashville program to lead all tree planting activities on privately held lands. And I'll explain why that aspect is so important. But I'm going to also just go ahead and define urban forest as well, because if that's a term you're unfamiliar with, it does have a specific implication. So obviously forestry is the traditional science of trees and forest systems, and urban forestry is the contemporary overlay of built environment and people. So trees themselves, the study of individual trees is arboriculture. That's the management and care of an individual organism. So through pruning and removal or plant health care management, that's arboriculture. That's a related field, but urban forestry is broadly the management of the entire forest system in a given extent. For the purposes of this conversation, Davidson County. So we're managing for things like tree diversity, tree resilience, and maximizing the benefits of trees to create a livable and robust, resilient city for all of our residents. So Root Nashville is on private property, ideologically with in mind that even if a tree is planted in somebody's yard, its benefits are extending into publicly owned areas and affecting our micro and macro climates. So you can't necessarily categorize an urban forest as just public and privately held lands, but I'll get a little bit more into that later too. So Root Nashville and how it's kind of nestled into the Cumberland River Compact. I manage the city's program, Root Nashville, and a few other programs that I can answer questions about. I won't be presenting much about, but we have some conservation landscaping programs that build rain gardens, help restore native turf grass into what's called kind of like native prairies, like that rely on native flowers and grasses and sedges to encourage people to transition away from traditional mowed lawns. And we also run a program called DPAVE, which converts excess and underutilized asphalt into thriving green spaces. And I'm going to give an example of that too. But for anyone who's in like the Green Hills Midtown area, we just completed a project at Calvary United Methodist Church. And then we just did a project as well at the North Nashville Farmers Market. But so like Karen mentioned, Root Nashville as a city has committed itself to a goal of planting 500,000 trees by 2050. This is something that each mayoral administration themselves to, and this is anybody planting a tree in Nashville is counting towards this goal. So it's not just the compact, it's not just Metro Water Services. This also includes developers, other environmental nonprofits that are planting trees, and even homeowners can count their trees in our online software that manages and counts these trees. But the values that guide the execution of this program is to create a program that considers human health outcomes, climate resiliency, and equity to make sure that these services we provide are very mindful of where tree canopy is and isn't, so that we can maximize the provisionary services of these trees. So I'll talk quickly about the benefits of trees. I'm sure most people here are familiar, but I always like to kind of just make sure everyone understands the full extent of the benefits trees have. Especially in urban hydrology, trees play a massive role in managing water quality and quantity. And how they do so is through a few naturally occurring biological processes. So first, when there's a major storm event, their tree canopies are able to capture and store stormwater on their leaves and branches. And each year, that can amount to anywhere from 5 to 700 gallons of water per year. That's usually with larger mature trees versus smaller ornamental trees. But they also then are able to direct stormwater into the soil below through what's called stem flow and promote infiltration of water into the soil beneath the canopy of trees. And there's been some studies that have shown that trees can increase soil water storage by up to 350%. So unplanted soils are not really allowing for a lot of storage, whereas those roots are helping build porosity and therefore allow for more retention of stormwater. And here in Nashville, we rely on a combined sewer system. So reducing the amount of stormwater that's entering our combined sewer systems is especially important to protecting the Cumberland River's overall water quality and health for our city as we rely on it for our drinking water. So they help with reducing runoff by those processes I mentioned, stabilize our soils and reduce flooding, and all that also helps protect wildlife habitat that's very sensitive to these water quality changes. And something that I like to reiterate to people is that you can engineer amazing stormwater control measures, but nothing is more effective than a tree. I didn't even talk about one other bio process, which is called evapotranspiration, but that's more closely related or inextricably linked to atmospheric benefits. But for anybody who remembers their photosynthesis equation, when trees capture carbon dioxide, they release not only water, but also, or not only oxygen, but also water. And that is a process called evapotranspiration. It's the trees literally breathing, and they are quite literally cooling the temperatures of the atmosphere around them. So that's a water loss that also helps reduce surface temperatures, which is critical in urban areas. And this heat map is a good visual aid, but there was a climate study done in 2022 by the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, and they did a climate study. And areas like Jolton or Brentwood or Forest Hills versus downtown can have temperature differences ranging from 6 to 8 degrees during the day. And also downtown doesn't cool off nearly as much at night. So reducing surface temperatures is critical for reducing what's called the urban heat island effect, which is the phenomenon used to describe how impervious surfaces like roads, sidewalks, and roofs absorb and re-radiate solar energy, which disproportionately keeps our cities hotter versus our natural environments that are around urban areas. But also trees and their leaves have a bunch of other great benefits for our atmosphere, one being when they're photosynthesizing, they help to capture harmful air pollutants and also store it on their surfaces as well, which is really important for protecting human health. The reduction of surface temperatures and the capture of harmful air pollutants is especially important for areas of the city where there's people with vulnerable underlying conditions like asthma, cardiovascular disease, or other medical conditions. So the reduction of surface air temperatures is really important for that. But it also can help save you some money too. Trees and their canopies can reduce your annual energy consumption and ultimately save you money. And this is all great. And I think this stat at the bottom, I really like to reference to people because trees have been shown to reduce surface temperatures by 36 degrees Fahrenheit and vehicular cabin temperatures by up to almost 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can imagine if you're shopping and you're under a tree canopy, it makes an immediate difference for people who maybe don't have reliable transit, or if they do have transit, their AC isn't reliable in their car, like me. But there's a bunch of other benefits that often go overlooked that I love to celebrate too. There's community benefits associated with planting trees. They're able to transform landscapes that create idyllic communities. Karen, you said you lived in Sylvan Park. We have cherry trees along Murphy Road that are beautiful, that I think are a really prominent fixture of Sylvan Park, and many other neighborhoods have specific tree compositions that people associate with character of neighborhoods. My other favorite benefit for communities is traffic calming measures. Tree-lined streets have been shown to reduce vehicular collision rates and also slow traffic speeds. And this is really easy to picture if you imagine driving down an open freeway or highway. You're naturally going to speed up and put your foot to the metal. But if you're driving along a street with trees along the roadways, it helps reduce people's risky driving behaviors. And also, it's literally a physical barrier between your house or the sidewalk and cars, which is also fortification that protects pedestrians as well. They can also help reduce noise and wind. Trees have been shown to increase property values by up to 1% per tree, which that adds up, and they create screening and privacy as well. And then there's social benefits. I mean, I could talk about these all day, but this is something that can be, when not managed well, trees can be divisive. But if we have a community that supports tree planting initiatives and rallies behind it, it can be something that's exciting and restorative and allows people to really come together when they otherwise maybe wouldn't. So, for example, when you're driving around and you see an area that doesn't have a tree, it can give you pause and allow you to be hopeful for change that you can easily implement yourself by planting a tree. And as you see it grow, it can motivate us to create and restore a more healthy living environment for future generations. They can increase community cohesion by bringing us together to actually put our boots on and shovels in the ground to really make our neighborhoods better. Also, just their long-term stewardship and care is just another way to kind of raise awareness for environmental initiatives and causes, and also just bring people together to work on things together, which is really hard sometimes in certain neighborhoods. And also, worker productivity rates go up when people can have a view shed that includes trees. Hospital rates, recovery rates go up when people have windows in hospitals that view trees. And overall mental and physical health outcomes improve in areas near trees. And also, by supporting Root Nashville, you're creating new jobs. And so, for example, with Root Nashville at the Cumberland River Compact, we started with one field crew, and now we have 4 field crews that employ up to 20 people. So by supporting environmental initiatives, you are supporting the creation of a robust job industry that will only continue to grow alongside these trees. So you might be asking yourself now, why trees in an urban waters division? Obviously, you probably understand the relationship between trees and water, but these are some graphics I really found interesting from our most recent urban tree canopy assessment that was released last year. And on the left, you can see the 14 different community planning areas that kind of are used to characterize our city. And you can see where the changes in canopy were over the previous 5 years between 2016 and 2021 when they sampled our tree canopy. And you can see some areas are growing while others are experiencing losses. Namely, Green Hills in Midtown and North Nashville lost up to 2% of their tree canopy. So, when you overlay that with the total plantable area, you can kind of start to see some interesting patterns. Namely, a lot of the areas along the Cumberland River have a high overall plantable area, which the closer we get to our waterways, the more important this tree canopy is for all of those benefits to the urban hydrological regime I mentioned earlier. And then one other thing I found really interesting is obviously the relationship between downtown and land cover classification. You can see the overall percentage of tree or impervious surfaces, and you can imagine that as we get closer to the Cumberland River and downtown, there's more impervious surfaces that are conveying massive amounts of stormwater directly into the river through surface runoff and sheet flow. So these are areas that you can imagine that we need to prioritize tree planting to preserve a lot of different aspects of our environment. But the status of our urban forest is interesting. Unfortunately, in the most recent analysis from 2016 to 2021, there was an overall loss of 1.5% of our tree canopy. We were trending up a lot between 2010 and 2016, and then we started to trend down between 2016 and 2021. I'll get into some of the reasons that might be to explain for that. But a key stat I like to kind of point people to is overall our city, has 24% of its total land cover is available for planting right now. Citywide, that number is of impervious surface is about 17%, and unplantable areas is about 30%. But another thing that I found interesting too is our overall tree canopy percentage across Davidson County is 56%. But if you remove some of the peripheral parts and only focus on our urban general services district, which is the historic boundaries of Nashville and more of like what I would consider our more urban areas, our tree canopy percentage is just 34%, which is good, but you can imagine it's decreasing and really vital to not only plant new trees, but protect the ones we have as well. Um, and the analysis of the canopy assessment really kind of corroborated the importance of planting on private property. Because as you can see in the first study frame between 2010 and 2016, there was an increase of 1.5% of our tree canopy on residential yards. And then that number between 2016 and 2021 halted to 0%. So there's no gain in the most recent analysis on residential yards, and that kind of justifies why Root National needs to have a concerted effort to galvanize our citizenry to plant in their yards outside of directly manageable lands that Metro owns. So what are some of the threats to urban forests? Well, obviously everybody talks about landscape development. That is a common one, but there's some other ones as well. Pruning and clear cutting from utility companies is one to maintain delivery of our critical infrastructure, but other ones are being exacerbated by our changing climatic regimes. One such example is weather. In an analysis that was done by, I think it was the CDC, they released what's called a social vulnerability index. Nashville's biggest climate change related threat as far as a climate impact is increasing amounts of tornadoes and high wind events. And if you imagine that with trees, everybody remembers the tornado from 5 years ago. You can wake up one morning and just have an entire neighborhood have its canopy completely decimated. So that is one major explanatory variable to indicate why some of these losses are occurring. But also hydrological shifts in our climate too. Our summers are getting drier. We're getting less rainfall accumulation. And we also are getting infrequent but more intense rainfall too, which puts more stress on our combined sewer system. And then, like Karen said at the beginning, there is an increasing amount of pressure from non-native invasive pests and disease disorders. And you can imagine, kind of like people, trees in urban environments are already under a lot of stress. They're disproportionately hotter. They're disproportionately drier. So these are trees that might already have stress, and that opens up a lot more room for those disorders to cause overall failure and death where it might not in native vegetated areas. So a couple of the prominent threats from insects and biotic organisms. Emerald ash borer beetle is been in the United States for about 10 years, and it's been here in Tennessee for about 6 or 7 now. And their target is our native ash trees, which unfortunately the treatment is an insecticide that's injected right into its xylem. But it's costly and not effective at an urban forest scale. You can treat your own trees every other year on your yard, but there's just no management cycle that is realistic to implement from our city's government. So homeowners and cities are left to kind of remove and restore their canopy by replacing ash trees, which justifies the importance of not relying on just one species of tree, because that leaves you vulnerable to unpredictable changes that we can't necessarily predict over centuries, pretty much. So as we're thinking about what trees to plant now, we not only have to consider what does grow well in Middle Tennessee now, but what might be apt to success over the course of 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, and more. So this graphic on the top right, I think, is great at kind of capturing the essence of what I'm trying to impose upon you, which is you have your native forest systems, and the change in climatic regimes affect a couple phenological traits of trees, which is you might see more seedling or tree death. The phenological cycles might be disrupted. We've all seen this before, where trees will start to flower earlier in the year, which is out of sync with our native populations of bees and pollinators, and leaves these trees also vulnerable to frost cycles, and overall just reduces their performance, which decreases the amount of benefits they bring to our cities. And the scenarios that leaves our city with is reduced carbon storage, hurt amounts of or reduced amount of biodiversity, and changes in our native ecosystems. And then there's certain things you can't control, such as what trees are going to do well. And that's why planting a diverse amount kind of allows you to kind of although you're not sure which trees are going to ultimately perform the best, you can use different predictive models to kind of help guide those decisions. So that's a lot, but what what is the action that you can take? Well, Root Nashville relies on what's called a neighborhood planting captain model. These are just some of our captains from this year, and I saw one other in here, Anne, who's one of our captains in Bellwood, who's getting their trees next week. And Karen, I think, is in here too. But what's awesome about being a captain is this kind of caters to what I think is a really strong asset that Nashville celebrates. We have distinct neighborhoods with very distinct character. What challenge that poses to me as the program manager is I cannot predict the benefits that resonate with people. I don't have the relationships with your neighbors or your communities. And what you can step in and do is kind of translate these contemporary urban forest challenges in a way that's meaningful and impactful to your neighborhood. And also, it creates a wonderful opportunity to activate your community, re-excite your community, and also we've seen areas with and without a neighborhood planting captain have drastically different rates of participation in the program. So, for example, one thing I've noticed is neighbors who order through our program that have a captain, I think, kind of feel a little bit more ownership of their tree planting. Like they know that there's a person that is relying on them to plant the tree, and they want to make sure that they're not disappointing their neighbors. So we have fewer cancellations, more orders, and our captains really help to kind of take this and kind of run with it in so many different ways that varies in each neighborhood. It's so exciting. This is just one captain that we have. His name's George, and I thought this quote kind of captures the essence of what I'm trying to explain. But having somebody in the neighborhood that is able to approach people in a way that's nonpartisan, that's in spaces that are neutral and not charged, where people are willing to listen, is so essential and such a great way to activate yourself, especially given just all the amount of change that's going on at every scale of government right now. But this is just a really great way to build your confidence, get to know your neighbors. A lot of our captains will canvass door to door and talk to their friends and family and encourage them to order trees through our website. But really, the role of a captain is not to plant trees themselves. We have the field crews to do that. You also don't have to manage the orders. All you need to do is during the summer between May and August is rally as many people as you can to order trees. And then we handle the complex parts of kind of operationalizing the logistics of delivering up to 10,000 trees across Davidson County. Each captain kind of adds a different spice or flavor to the program that we love to encourage as best we can. But there is no one size fits all. But overall, like some captains give, maybe 10 hours a year and some give 50. Like it really just depends on the person and what they want to do with the program. But we try our very best to kind of allow people to take our program and keep it flexible and adaptable. This is a really broad map. I can share it with people who are curious, but it kind of shows the areas where we have captains. At the extent it's at right now, it looks like we have so many captains, but please email me if you want to be a captain. I'll also have the application and explain that more. But you can see there's definitely certain gaps. And just because a neighborhood has a captain does not mean they should not have another one. One critical role our captains play is right before the delivery of the trees, they kind of send out some door hangers on everybody who's ordered a tree, reminding them to confirm their order and dig their hole before our tree delivery gets there. And for some of our neighborhoods that have 50, 60, 70 homes, a co-captain can be great to help reduce the burden of delivering those, but also it encourages collaboration and new ideas where it can be a really fun way to get to know some of your neighbors. So here's the process. Just kind of at a cyclical level, it's kind of a lot to take in, but you can see we're kind of in March now. This is the end of our delivery season. And April is when we kind of go hard trying to recruit new captains who might feel like they're a good fit for this program or want to learn more. That deadline is April 30th. And then in May, we will host a few trainings that are available for people to learn more about urban forestry. But then you have all summer to get your neighborhood to sign up for trees. And then you'll be assigned a week anytime between October and March where you can expect your neighborhood trees to be delivered. And the key roles that, like I mentioned, is you'll do canvassing, You can share this opportunity on social media or platforms your neighborhood uses. You can attend with me or on your own community meetings to get people to sign up. And you're given yard signs to put throughout the community to get people to order as well. And then the other thing too is you can imagine that this is a massive volume of trees that we're dealing with, and some people, as captains, will really help reduce our burden by talking with their neighbors throughout the process. So rather than their neighbor being confused and emailing our inbox, they can kind of just text their captain and say like, "Hey, do you remember like what tree I ordered?" or do you remember when our delivery is scheduled for? And they can kind of answer some of those softball questions and kind of keep their neighbors engaged that way throughout the year too. We also do offer the opportunity for our captains to recruit larger non-residential sites as well. So we can do large-scale deliveries and or plantings of sites that can handle more than 10 trees. Those commonly include houses of worship, private schools, nonprofit or businesses, apartments, HOAs, and for sites that can handle more than 30 trees, um, on a case by case basis, they can also get watered by the compact for 2 years. So if you ever see trees getting watered in right of ways or in yards with a truck, the compact waters with our field crew all summer 10 gallons per tree on 6,000 trees each week. So we do have an earmark for community sites that can take uh, some community reforestation, and we try to water some sites like that as well to reduce burden. You know, because a lot of churches, for example, can't commit themselves to water 30 trees per week, but we want to encourage those spaces that can really increase the impact of our tree canopy program to participate. So we try to remove that barrier. Um, we recently celebrated a milestone as a city between all the government and nonprofit agencies that plant trees. Root Nashville did just plant its 50,000th tree in November. You can see it was a swamp white oak, which is a great stately native tree that has beautiful acorns that have the ability to feed our native foraging food for critters. But you can see we're on our way to get to 50,000 trees. Um, and I did want to talk about Deed Pave because this kind of integrates with Root Nashville in a really interesting and beautiful way. And this is my favorite project we've done so far with a picture on the right. You can see somebody named Trinice. This is one of our planting captains who's been on the beat for a few years now. And she came to me and she was like, "Hey, there's this slip lane in my neighborhood that is so ugly and so dangerous." And you can see a slip lane is kind of, if you look at the right of this picture, there's a four-way stop and it's kind of a cut through like uh, the hypotenuse of a triangle, and it encourages unsafe driving behavior, and just is a really unnecessary addition to this community. And she had the vision of restoring this with tree canopy. So the compact in support of Route Nashville was able to remove the asphalt with permission and partnership from NDOT and Metro Water Services, who funded the project. We were able to remove this 5,800 square foot of road segment. It's really interesting. We take a concrete saw and cut it into small segments and get an excavator in there. And then you start to take those pieces and load them into dump trucks to be taken off site. And afterwards, we restore the soil with different soil amendments and organic matter to make sure that there's enough nutrients available for trees. And this area got 27 trees planted that all have different provisionary services of food or foraging aspects. Um, so you can see this is the planting plan we ended up coming up with. And this space is now been revitalized for this neighborhood because before it was just this old road that didn't really cater to anybody. And now NDOT poured a few benches in there with names of community members who had passed away. And there was a food truck when they broke ground on this, and all the community came out to celebrate this new space that kind of functions as like a permanent green space for the community. So Deep Pave is,
Jason,
yeah,
Jason, could you stop for a moment?
yeah.
There has been a number of people interested in the specific trees, and I think this is a very good place to answer that question.
What was
So
the
I
exact
see
question?
serviceberry, American basswood, shagbark hickory, tulip poplar, Coosa dogwood, pawpaw, persimmon, bald cypress, and swamp white oak. So hopefully there is some, I think there have been concerns about, are you doing, what you might get at I'm not going to say that. I was going to say something. Anyway, just pine trees and cedars and things like that. But in fact, these are the kinds of trees. So if you'd like to go into it further, I just wanted to stop you because there's been some interest.
Yeah. Well, that was last slide, so I can go ahead and answer questions. Perfect timing. But yeah, so to answer the question of what trees are planted for Route Nashville, um, each year the compact offers a list that features 5 to 10 species on a given year. And each year we try to feature different species that are native to Middle Tennessee that can fill different ecological and functional niches. So, like, we'll have some understory flowering trees that can be planted in areas where there's not much room or for people that want to support native pollinators. And then we also try to feature uh, a representative population of canopy trees that can grow larger and longer and have more environmental benefit for the city, and occupy different um, ornate or functional traits like different fall colors or different leaf characteristics like evergreens. So each year the compact offers, you know, 5 to 7 for neighborhood yards and an additive amount for the larger sites where we need more tree diversity. But then also Metro Water Services for their tree planting programs, they have an approved tree list that comes out to about 80 different trees. Um, so, each agency kind of plants a diverse palette, but they all kind of are vetted for um, non-invasive tendencies and always with the goal of large canopy trees where there's room to support without causing damages to infrastructure or anything else.
Yeah, I think that answers it very, very well. Thank you. I think there was a concern about, are we throwing in where these are very well thought out trees, and every year each one is a whole whatever's being put in is being put in in a mix. Thanks, Jane.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't mean to stop you. I just realized it's been piling up, and you had a really good place to show a very major diversity of trees that you had. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
so did I actually stop you now? Because it
No, this is where I was prepared to end. So maybe we can go ahead and uh,
Well, there are a few questions. One of them, which is you mentioned an online portal for people to register trees that they've planted. Do you know where that is? Or do you have?
yes,
Okay.
I can send it to you if you Google Nashville tree plotter. You'll find it. It's also on the Route Nashville website. But I can send it in the chat, or to you to share with others because it's a really fun way to kind of see the progress too. Like I always check
Yeah.
to see what
Yeah.
the little tree points are getting added. It gets me so excited, and um, yeah, so you can see that online, and I
That
can
would,
put that link.
yeah, it's a very nice, my son lived in New York City for a while, and actually they have such a thing in New York City, and everybody kind of has, you can have your favorite tree. So it's actually a very nice way of getting people connected to trees.
Yeah, that was actually so. New York City had what was called 1 Million Trees NYC, and this program was
Right.
born out of that. Um,
Uh,
and then what's even interesting is the captain's program was one that was developed here, and the Arbor Day Foundation created an implementation guide that other cities across the country have been contacting us about, asking questions about how to replicate the approach. So our city is like very fortunate to have like this really progressive, like awesome model that like others envy and try to recreate. It's really cool.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So another question that I had was that isn't about the trees, but is about the depaving projects, which sound wonderful. One of my favorite things, by the way. Is there a way to request those, or is it just something, is there a budget for them, or how do those get dealt with?
That's a great question. So we encourage people to apply on the Compact's website. If you Google like Cumberland River Compact DPave, you'll find it. But it's if you navigate to our website, there's a button for like our programs, and if you click Urban Waters and then navigate to the DPave section, there is a very simple application. It's by no means any sort of commitment, but that triggers us to go kind of do a site consultation to see um, what are the dynamics of the site and thinking about all the different aspects that go into the planning process. But we usually try to take on a few projects each year, and we usually kind of take those applications on a rolling basis.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. So I also added two things. There are two pieces of legislation. One piece of legislation that is possibly, I think it could pass this year, and it would be great if people would call their their representative or their senator, and that is a study of Bradford pears and their effects on agriculture and such here in the state. I don't know if any of you know what they're like, but they're not a particularly, I'm not at all fond of them, and many people are not. So it would be great to have a study that we're doing in the agriculture in Tennessee to deal with the issue of Bradford pears. I put that in the chat. And then the other one is that one of our local Nashville representatives has a resolution for Tennessee Tree Day, which is to be March 15th, which is next week.
Mm.
So those are two pieces of information. Then there's another question, the two together, which is something about development. And you had mentioned that as we have developed, we are losing our tree canopy. And a couple of different things. One is I know that there's been a move for infill development in Nashville, and my assumption is that as you put more on lots, more that you are going to lose trees. But then the other question is there not the case that you have to also, with code, put trees on when you do a development? So could you have a little bit of conversation about our development policies vis-a-vis trees?
Yeah, especially the question about somebody asked, where was the question? Essentially, as far as the code that requires X number of trees per lot, there's something called a TDU, which is a tree density unit, um, which you're correct. There is codes that require tree planting at the end of um, redevelopment. A lot of developers opt to do that, and if they don't, they can pay into a fund that supports tree planting efforts through Metro Water Services. So yes, developers are supporting the expansion of tree canopy in that way. Um, and development is just one of many losses. I couldn't say, what percentage of that 1.5 is development and climatic or natural tree senescence from harsher climate conditions. They're all kind of very difficult to parse out. But um, the other thing that can be challenging too with trees that are planted after development is sometimes um, you don't know the stock type, if it was planted properly, or if it was getting watered. So long-term survivability is always a challenge with those. It gets planted, but the other thing too is um, it's difficult to forecast how much of trees after development survive or not. Survivorship rates really affect the overall tree canopy as well. So um, it's just one of many factors in our city that affect like overall tree canopy percentage. So I hope that kind of answers the question. But yes, there is codes that require tree planting after development.
There's also a question that someone has about specific kinds of planting, and we have issues. I mean, there's development of residential, but then there's also development or that lack thereof, i.e. parking lots. And what does it mean to somehow work to plant so that parking lots have trees that help shade them? I mean, I think there are anyway, I'm just wondering if you have any ideas about how to promote that or how to bring that about.
Um, I quickly get outside of my knowledge bases, talking in depth about metro codes. So I would refer people to explore those to um, strengthen their opinions on them. But there are certain environmental standards developers are held to in new developments, especially with stormwater and tree canopy. And there are certain codes that require trees and landscaping alongside the developments of parking lots, but I'm not an expert on those specific codes.
Well, you don't have to know the codes. Do you have any, like, like as an arborist, as an urban arborist, what are there standard ways or ideas about how to make trees be part of parking?
That's a great question. And there are some really exciting and innovative um, engineering solutions you can deploy to um, maximize soil volume and therefore water capture while supporting healthy tree growth and the demands for compacted areas to support walking, running, biking, and even parking. For example, you can plant trees in either something called silvacells, which are kind of deck-like systems, or using something called structural soil, which is like a stone soil aggregate. And both of these allow for compaction over top, and you can divert stormwater into the soil beneath and still have pavement underneath it that doesn't uh, uh, deter healthy tree root growth. The issue is those solutions are very cost prohibitive and are usually only deployed in areas where there's a budget to carry those. And so there are really interesting ways to kind of allow for maximizing tree canopy and still supporting the demands for impervious surfaces that our city needs. But, um, you know, it just always kind of comes down to resources.
Yeah, yeah, right. So I think that was the end of the questions, unless somebody would like to unmute themselves and ask a question or add another one.
I can get off mute here. So, Jason, years ago, we had someone come from the city to talk about Dedrick Street and the planting there. That with the pervious, I don't know, the special blend of hardscape that was meant to help retain water. And in the plantings, there's planter boxes, there's trees, and it is a beautiful street. And I wondered if you had, this is maybe off topic for you, but if you had any information about, it seemed like a successful project, and
Mhm.
it hasn't been replicated as far as I know anywhere else.
Yeah. So conceptually, I would call that like green and complete streets. And that is a multidisciplinary field that includes planning, transportation agencies, and environmental groups. So, like for example, one of the big challenges with creating, first of all, complete streets, which is something critical to our current mayor, which is multimodal transit. That refers to like roadways that support multimodal transit, including walking, biking, and dedicated bus lanes here in Nashville. And then an extension of that is including stormwater control and tree planting fixtures that minimize runoff along our major thoroughfares. And there's a couple really interesting complete streets that have been installed across Nashville. Um, and the compact has helped plan a few of those. Um, I haven't visited Dietrich Seat myself, but they really are kind of the most resilient way to plan our cities. It just can get kind of challenging to retrofit them, but I know that with our redevelopment of certain thoroughfares with choose how you move, it's definitely kind of a priority for our current mayoral administration.
This is Joe McCaleb. Are you seeing some decline in certain species due to climate change? I'm seeing it in my woods. I've got about 12 acres of woods, and I am seeing decline in sassafras and some maples, and a very much an increase in beech. Do you know anything? Are you seeing that anywhere else?
Yeah, that's a great question. One such example is sugar maple. I have seen precipitously stressed and declining in our region, and certain varieties of oaks as well. Generally, like certain trees, in what have been historically categorized as native, as a status that we use to describe what is naturally occurring here the past few hundred years. Tree species which populations are currently that were currently in their southern extent are the ones struggling the most. Like, so for example, like sugar maple is a species that we were already kind of at its southernmost extent, and I'm seeing a ton of decline in that species the most. White pine seems to be struggling a little bit. So yeah, there's definitely certain species, and a resource I use a lot is it's a little bit more north in a different climate zone. I think we're 7A now, and Washington D.C. is 7B. I hope I'm getting that right. They have, if you Google DC Department of Transportation urban forestry climate change list, they did this really interesting matrix that shows different species resiliency to climate change. And I use that list a lot as a reference to remind myself which species are more likely to survive the duress of our changing climate versus those that may not. So, like, for example, on the other side, like loblolly pine is a species that thrives in the deep south that's thriving here in Nashville with climate change. So, like, the distribution of certain trees is definitely being affected, yes.
My understanding was that sassafras in particular, although it hasn't been a major issue, I works out in the Warner Parks, and they are concerned about a thing called laurel wilt, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you think you're seeing, Joe? Possibly it's affecting your sassafras.
No, I'm seeing the sassafras die. And I'm seeing beech just really take off. I mean, beech loves this weather. I've got much more beech now in my forest than I did 13 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so like I said, it's kind of like people. Like, if you have underlying conditions, a critical illness is more likely to cause you to get really sick, and trees are the same way with climate change and drought.
Yeah.
But also beech, that could also be a proxy of just natural forest regeneration. Like, beech are usually late successional species. So you could just be observing like the forest composition change to reflect kind of how they naturally would function after disturbance. But like Karen said, laurel wilt is a problem, and with the changing climatic regimes, that disorder is more threatening to species that already are stressed out and older and can't handle that as well as a stronger patient, for example.
That's unfortunate. I love sassafras. I love that little hand.
Me too. Yeah.
So we're nearing the end. Does anybody have any other questions? This has been fantastic, Jason, and just great. I really do appreciate this considerably. And I will save the chat so that we can add some of this information when we place it on our website. And if you would like to make your slides available, we can also put those up, and you can just send those to me. And if there are any other questions, we may be sending you some questions as well.
Sure.
I really appreciate this very much. And thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, I got to stop recording.